Welcome to another episode of Partners in Progress. We are an entrepreneurial couple. I'm Joe,
And I'm Liz.
and we believe really strongly in iron sharpens iron, and we can come up with some of the best insights when we're together having these conversations. So I'm actually a coach in the real estate world. I'm a business and a life coach. And if you're a realtor, or if you're a team leader or a coach yourself in the real estate space, I love working with team leaders because I know a lot of times when you get to that level, it can kind of get a little bit lonely at the top. And I know as an achiever, you don't like to think of it that way. I don't like to think of it that way, but when you get to that level, a lot of times you don't have people pouring into you on the same level that as when you are part of a team or you're in production. So I connect very deeply with team leaders and with office managers. So if you're someone that's really would like to have some personal coaching and some success and some life coaching, I'd love to connect with you. And then Liz, she does some of her own coaching as well.
Yeah, so I'm a stay-at-home mom and a caregiver and a homeschool mom. But I also started recently coaching moms that have children that have had leukemia or are going through treatment with leukemia to just help them navigate that journey.
Yeah, so obviously we have very different niches,
Yeah.
but but they both come from personal experience and a deep passion. Um, you know, I think probably most of you know by this point that we have a son that's almost at the end of treatment for leukemia now, and but we learned a lot of things the hard way,
Yeah.
a lot of things that we learned along the way that I think made a massive difference in his health and his treatment as he went along. So that's what Liz helps with, and she's already helped quite a few women really at least start to get their head around the process. So today we've been talking a whole lot about focus,
Yeah.
and so that's what we decided to talk about this week because I think I think focus is everything. It's Tony Robbins says that where focus goes, energy flows. So whatever you're focusing on is gonna control the way you experience life. You experience. He says you've experienced the life you focus on because if you think about it, if you're focusing on all the negative and you're
Right.
focusing on everything that can go wrong, then
Well, in
that's what you're
when
gonna feel.
yeah, and when Keelan was first diagnosed, I mean, where would you be? Where would your focus be?
Yeah,
It's
fear.
right. And so that's all that we saw was fear
Right.
for like 2 days. And
I
then
think
we changed our focus on, getting him better. And who cared what the doctors were saying? That's what we focused on. And everything seemed to be a lot better. And he started to get better.
yeah,
And I don't know. I mean, it could be coincidence, but I think it's because our focus changed.
it's definitely because our focus changed.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, we were totally focused on fear. We were totally focused on survival. But but you can but it goes deeper than that because when you can focus on you can have one situation
Hmm.
and the situation doesn't change. The circumstances don't change, but if you change the way you look at it, change your perspective, you change the way you focus on and what you focus on, it changes the way that you live in
Show
that
up.
situation. It
Yeah.
controls the way you think, it controls the way you experience life because you can focus, for example, with our son, we could focus on the fear, we could focus on all the things that could go wrong, and there were a lot of complications, but or you could focus on the fact that he was getting better, the fact that he was still there and he made it through,
Yeah.
and that's a totally different shift. You know, to this actually the last 2 days I think showed a beautiful example of focus because I was teaching our daughter how to ride a bicycle for the first time without training wheels, and
Yeah.
she was freaking out. Like yesterday, she was really freaking out.
Yeah.
And
Neighbors were wondering if you were being mean or something.
well, but like I said, I think it was a really beautiful picture of focus because
Mhm.
when I'd be holding her and she would be running along beside her, and then I'd let go, and then she would be doing okay for a second until she started looking at the curb, or she looked
Or she
down at the
realized that you
bicycle,
weren't holding
or
on
she
to her
realized I wasn't
anymore.
there with her, and she changed her focus and she would crash. And
Mhm.
she never got hurt or anything like, not really, maybe a scraped knee or two, but she never got hurt. But her focus controlled where she was going,
Yeah.
controlled what she was doing. And then today we did it again.
She's afraid she's gonna hit the mailbox. I
Yeah, and she ran smack into the mailbox because she was focusing on the mailbox.
don't want to hit that. What are you
Yeah.
gonna do?
Well, it's like, I mean, it's like you're going down. You hear these stories about these cars going down these like deserted desert roads out in
Hmm.
the middle of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And they get into a spin or something, and they hit the one tree or the one telephone pole in a quarter mile because they're thinking, I don't want to hit that. I don't want to hit that.
Yep.
And so that what do they hit? They hit the telephone pole or the tree. And
Right.
that's exactly what was happening with her
Yeah.
is especially today is when I kept telling her I was running along beside her. Kept telling her, look where you want to go.
Hmm.
Don't look down at your bicycle. I know it's hard, but don't focus on your bicycle. Don't focus over on the curb. Focus on where you want to go.
Yeah.
And when she got laser focused on where she actually wanted to be, she leveled out and she was pedaling perfectly. And then you could just see kind of
The smile.
the
Yeah. Having
tinges of a
fun.
smile on the edge of her lips, and it was, like I said, it was a beautiful picture of
Focus.
focus
Hmm.
because when she was focused on where she wanted to go, what she wanted to get out of this, she had a goal in mind.
Yeah.
Then it was smooth. But when she started to focus on how to do it, and she started focusing on the on the fear, she started focusing on what might happen. That's when
Yeah.
she started to lose control.
Hmm.
And that's clearly a picture of our own life, right? If we are not focused on our goals, if we're not focused on where we're actually going, we're not
Hmm.
looking at where we want to be, there's a couple of things that can happen. First of all, is if we're focusing on what we fear, when we focus on something,
Hmm.
we tend to get more of it. So when you
Yep.
focus on fear, you're going to get more fear, and it's going to create more situations that compound that fear. And then we do that in life, we do that in business, we do that in our health,
Hmm.
everything. Where if we start really focusing on what we're afraid of, then eventually we're going to start steering toward that. It's just inevitable. When you're riding a bicycle, if you think back to when you were riding a bicycle,
Hmm.
it's this, or when we were teaching her, it's the same thing. You have to be able to focus on where you're going. The second thing is, like I said about, her when she was riding her bicycle, every once in a while she would look down
Yeah.
and she would start to lose control. And the reason for that was, what do you think is the reason for that?
She wasn't focused on where she was going.
Right, but she was focusing on how she was going to do it
Ah.
instead of the goal and just doing it and taking
Hmm.
the action. How many times do we get stuck in how is this going to work? How are we going to
So
get this?
much. Yeah.
How are we going to get this?
Are we gonna pay that?
How
How
are we
are
going
we
to pay
gonna?
this bill? How are we going
Yeah.
to get this system to work? How are we going to reach people? How are we going to market? How?
Oh.
And we get so
Yeah.
stuck in the how in our mind that we start focusing down and we're not looking at where we're actually going anymore and what the
We're not
purpose
looking
was.
up at where
Right,
we need to be focusing on.
right.
Yeah.
And so you have to be laser focused on things. You know, um, Tony Robbins also says that what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right.
Yeah.
So if you're focusing on the things that can go wrong instead of focusing on the things that can go right, you're going to automatically start to steer toward that. You know, that happens in our finances, it happens in our businesses. You know, I remember,
And relationships.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, if you start to think about, that's a good example because if you think, like one of the examples that I like to use is if your your spouse is late,
Hmm.
if they're supposed to be home at a certain time and they're not there, and you have a different ways that you can focus on that, right? You can either think, you
Oh,
know,
they hit I-4 traffic.
right, or maybe they don't care and they didn't get here on time. You know,
Hmm.
you're going to have a very different focus. You're going to have a very different reaction if you think that they are not getting home on time and they didn't tell me and they're just trying to blow me off, or you think they got in a wreck. That's going to be two very
Hmm.
different areas of
Either way,
focus.
you're gonna be freaking out.
Right, but when they finally show up, one is like,
Relief because
you
they're
moron,
okay.
why didn't you tell me that you weren't going to be
Hmm.
here on at a certain time? And one is the relief, like, oh man, thank God you're safe, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, I know you work with some women, that are in that fear mentality
Yeah.
already.
Well, it's kind of where you live for the first, well, something that never really goes away, especially with what the medical system says. They're like, anyway, there's always a chance of relapse, is what they say. So
Right.
you're always in that fear. So you have to kind of like pull yourself out of it. Because if you do focus on the fact that, you know what, he could relapse, he has
Hmm.
that chance. How are we going to show up for him if we keep thinking he's just going to relapse?
Right.
Well, that's not fair for him, right? So I think you got to look to God for to get rid of that fear, because isn't that the number one phrase in the Bible? Fear not.
Yeah, probably.
Pretty sure it is, because I mean, as humans, we fear everything.
Yeah.
We're always focused on fear. We shouldn't be, because God says, do not fear or fear
Right.
not. You have little faith. I
Well,
read those a lot.
well, I think you brought up a really interesting point too, because you said if we focus on a relapse, for example, it affects him too.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we think that whatever we're focusing on
Just
only
affecting
only
us.
affects me, right?
Yeah.
Only affects me at the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's even if you can get to the point where you realize that focus does affect you. Like, because a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people just let life happen to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They let the environment steal their focus. They let their relationships steal their focus. They let the circumstances
Well, yeah.
and all of these things bombarding them, and they're not. Most people are not consciously controlling their focus.
Right.
They're just they're just looking at whatever's happening next,
Well, think about
and
it.
that's why
Before,
they're living on a roller coaster because they're of course you're gonna feel depressed and freaked out and then happy the next moment and like that up and down because you're just focusing on whatever comes.
yeah.
What are we gonna say?
Oh, I was going to talk about. Remember when we first moved here from New Mexico, and
Hmm.
the first hurricane
Yeah.
that came through, I was freaking out. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, it's gonna be the scariest thing ever!" And then it happened,
Yeah.
right? And it wasn't that bad. I'm like, "Oh, this is just a lot of rain and wind."
That's why we
Like,
live in Central Florida.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, "Thank you, Jesus, that it wasn't so bad for us." But it is scary for the
it
other.
hit a lot of people really badly,
Yeah, it did.
but
But but they also have time to move to
sure.
higher ground,
Yeah.
and most of the time, right? I mean,
Yeah, they have warning.
yeah. So that's, I mean, when you're focusing on like the storm itself, would you move, or would you just sit there and just, think, oh, this is going to be really scary, and it
Right.
just paralyzes you and you can't move forward?
And so, but now you have a different perspective on it
Yeah.
because you've been through the storm,
Right.
right?
But I've
That was
never been through one like on the coast, which I
right,
don't, I pray that I never do, but I also
right,
pray for the people that live on the coast because they do have to deal with that. But I bet you they're not that scared because they know what's going to happen. So they're like, well, kind of sucks, but stuff is stuff, and
yeah,
they move to higher ground
right,
because their focus isn't on their stuff; it's on keeping themselves alive, and just will move forward.
right. Yeah, I guess if you got stuck in the focus of, oh my God, I'm gonna lose everything.
Yeah, you would get overwhelmed. You're like, I can't take my whole house with me. I only have, X amount of hours to get out of here.
Right,
So at that point, you're not even thinking about your stuff. Your focus has changed to, I need to keep my family safe.
right.
So
Yeah, and that applies to
everything.
that applies not just to the weather, but every storm that hits our
Hmm.
life, right? It could
Right.
be our personal lives, it could be health, it could be relationships, it could be your business. I
Yeah,
think I just said that, but
financially.
yeah,
Yeah.
because you got to, like I said, whatever you're focusing on is going to affect those around you. Because not only does the focus, I mean, it changes the way you see it, it changes the way you feel, it changes the way you show up, it changes your state,
Hmm.
whatever you focus on. Tony Robbins talks about the triad. You've got the the three the three elements that control your state. You've got focus, you've got physiology, which is what you do with your body, and then you've got language,
Hmm.
right? And those three things are going to affect your state. I think I mean, they're all probably equally important. That's why it's the triad. Maybe one of these days we'll talk about physiology and language. I
Okay.
would like to talk about language, but focus is so important. It's one of the biggest things that controls the way you feel, the way
Yeah.
your state is. Because if you're focusing on negative things,
You're going to be a negative person.
and then it becomes a pattern.
Hmm. You get stuck in your, what do you call it? Your crazy eight.
Your crazy hate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's like, yeah, they call it the crazy eight. It's like, I think they call it that in psychology, but it's you go from like
You can use mine if you
one of
want.
the versions, one of the most common versions of the crazy eight is you go between depression and anger.
Hmm.
Because what happens is you feel depressed by whatever. And the thing is, you don't have to have a good reason. We'll just say good. It just depends on the person. You can have maybe some very legitimate reasons, but some people can have everything going for them and they still get stuck in these patterns
Hmm.
because that's what they're focusing on, right? So you're focusing on, depression,
Yeah.
and you go in this loop, and you start getting really down and really depressed, and eventually you feel completely powerless and completely hopeless, and your body and your mind just snaps and goes, nope, I don't want to feel like this anymore, and you go straight to angry.
Anger. Hmm.
And it gives you power. The anger gives you power. That focus toward that energy, toward that angry energy, makes you feel powerful, right?
Hmm.
I know I've gone through it, but it makes you feel like you can be in control. Now I can do things because
I'm
I'm
angry.
angry.
Yeah. The Hulk is coming out.
Right, kind of, yeah. And so then you stay there for a while, and then you just start,
Losing.
as everyone knows, when you stay in an angry state for an extended amount of time, you start destroying things around you. Destroy relationships. You destroy your. Sometimes you destroy your property.
Property.
Just depends
Yeah.
on the situation. But anger is destructive,
Hmm.
and so eventually your mind is like, I can't do this anymore. I'm destroying everything around me. And then you go, wait, hang on a minute. I'm destroying everything around me, and then you go right back into depression because you're destroying everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then you stay in depression for a while, but then eventually you don't like feeling helpless anymore, and you go back to anger, and it's this crazy. They call it the crazy eight,
Mm-hmm.
and it all has to do with focus, 100% focus, because no matter where you are in life, you always have the choice of what to focus on. You can focus on wondering if you're going to make rent or not.
Yeah.
You can focus on that, and you can let it depress you, and you can let it freak you out, or you can
When it get you
focus,
angry.
or you can focus on the things that you can control.
Right.
You
Which
know,
is your state and your focus.
right?
You can control those things.
You can control your state at any moment. You can control
Yep.
your state,
Yep.
no matter where you are in life.
Kind of like the storm. You can't control what the storm is going to do, but you can control how you prepare for it.
Right.
Yep.
I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago with the
Yeah.
cow versus the bison, right? Did we talk about that on the podcast? I don't
I don't.
remember.
I don't know.
But basically the cow runs away from the storm, but the bison faces the storm. He
Yeah.
runs directly into the storm, so that I think Tom Ferry has something like that where he says like charge the storm,
Yeah.
and the storm passes over them because they're willing to face it.
Right.
You know, so are you are you focusing on trying to, and you can use that as an example of focus too. Like, see, I told you focus affects everything. Are you focusing on in the middle of a storm? You said you can't control the storm, right? But could you ask yourself in the middle of the storm, what can I learn from this?
Yeah. You can also focus on the one that controls the storm.
Right.
Just saying.
There's only one that controls everything, right?
Exactly. So if you can't find something to focus on, God is a good person to go to for focus. Just saying.
Well, it should be our ultimate focus.
Well, yes. But I'm just saying sometimes it's hard to find, like when you're going through that crazy eight and the storm and the trials, it's hard to remember to if you just focus on God, because it's like, well, God already knows all my problems.
Right.
He should, know how that we need them fixed or whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, what are you doing for God? Like, are you focusing on Him, or are you focusing on the problems that you have?
Yeah.
I think sometimes I feel like I'm focusing on God when I'm just like, well, God, why aren't you helping us with X, Y, and Z? But it's like that's not really focusing on God, is it? Because you're asking Him, why isn't He doing this for me?
Right.
So it's just,
Why isn't this happening? Why isn't it
yeah,
working?
yep.
And
Why do you hate me?
so
No,
then if you think why isn't it working,
yeah,
what actually are you focusing on in that moment?
the thing that's not working.
Or me,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, myself
Why isn't
or.
the thing I did isn't why isn't it working?
Mm-hmm.
Why am I going through this pain? Right?
Yeah.
Why
Why is it my son? Why is it, you know, why is it cancer? Why, there's so many whys we can ask God. So what's the question we should be asking God? No, I'm really asking you
what's
because
the question that we should be asking?
yes.
What can I learn from this? What
Mm-hmm.
are you trying to teach me? And that's why I love what question so much,
Yeah.
because the thing I feel like when you ask a why question, your focus goes straight to,
Why is it happening? Or
yeah, maybe it's just a result
kind of just
of
turns
our
back to
culture.
yourself because,
Well, of
like,
our
why?
culture, it just feels a lot of times when you ask someone a why question just directly, it feels very confrontational,
That makes sense.
which
So you're having a
it's
conference
not
with God.
necessarily,
Yeah.
but I don't know if it's the Western culture or what, but it's just when you ask someone a direct why'd you do that, or why didn't you do that, then it just comes across very confrontational.
Yeah.
But if you ask, what can I learn from this, or what was, what was the thinking behind that action? When I say, why did you do that, or what was the thinking behind that action? This is exactly the same question, but
But it's a
it
different
opens it up, and it
feeling.
helps you to
Yeah.
be able to change your focus,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, you're thinking about, well, why didn't I do that? Why am why
What
didn't
did I
why
do
didn't I why
wrong?
didn't
Yeah.
I follow through? Why didn't I do it? And what's wrong with me?
Mhm.
But if you go, what was I'm just using an example, but you say if you do say what was the thinking behind that action? You go, well, then it actually makes you think critically, like, okay,
Well, then you
well,
explain why you
what
did
was
that
I
action.
thinking when I
Yeah.
did that?
Yeah, exactly. Makes sense.
So if you can change, so if you can change it to why is this happening, to
What
you
can
could
I
you
learn
could
from
even
this?
say what is the reason for this event?
Mhm.
What it's the same question.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? What is the reason? What is what am I supposed to be learning from this?
Or who can I help from this?
That's an even better question.
Yeah. What about how questions? How can I serve others?
Yeah. Well, if it's focused on others, then it's always a good question.
Right.
Because when we're focused on ourselves, then we start to focus on all it's just automatic. We start to focus on all the things that are wrong, right?
Right.
But when you're focusing on the things that have gone right, like for example, if I asked you right now, what, you know, give me a list of the top three best things in your life, what would you say?
My husband, my children, and God.
It's a scripted answer, right?
It's not scripted, but that would be the first
And
three.
that's true, right?
Yes.
So I would just say that most of the time when you ask people questions that like that, and I ask people questions similar to that all the time,
Mhm.
and it always has to do with relationships. Always, 100% of the time, it always has to do with connection or
That
relationships.
makes sense.
When I ask people, what are the top three most important things in your life, they don't ever say my house, my
My car.
car. Never. It's never happened. Sometimes they'll say, things like, my position, and then I don't think they say it in those words,
Like
but
their
basically
career.
like what they've accomplished. But those accomplishments even all have to do with connection as well, because they don't ever say like, all the money I make, the
Right.
career I have because it gives me a bunch of money. It's because they are able to connect with people. They're able to build something that matters to other people, right? So
Mhm.
whenever we switch our focus to someone else, whenever we shift our focus to serving instead of what's in it for me, it's, you know, how can I serve others, then that focus changes. That focus
Then changes
shift
your
changes everything.
right.
So it's really just it's critical in every aspect of life is focus. You can even apply it to health. You could apply it to like exercise, for example,
Mhm.
because you could focus on,
Oh, I don't have enough
you know,
time to exercise.
or you could focus on. I guess what I was trying to say is you could focus on, um, I have to work out,
Yeah.
or you could focus on, this is going to give me more energy. This is going to give me a better body. This is going to give me more health later on.
More
So
longevity.
you're
Yeah.
focusing on what's it's going to get you in the long run instead of the pain now.
Yeah. So you're focusing on your goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Which is
ultimately humans we're all motivated by two impulses. And to run away from that fact, you're just kidding yourself. We're always motivated by two impulses, period, no matter what. We're always either trying to avoid pain or we're trying to gain pleasure.
Mhm.
That's like our basic instincts. And so you have to learn to change the
You have to
focus.
find pleasure in the pain
Well, and
in
you
a
have to
way.
learn how to change the focus from pain to pleasure.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to, yeah, you have to be able to shift the focus to be able to say, okay, well, a little bit of pain now means a lot of pleasure later,
Right.
right? So a little bit of pain every day working out is going to give me more energy. It's going to give me. It's going to help me lose weight. It's going to help me be healthier, depending on what the situation is. But if you can, again, shift the focus,
Mm-hmm.
it applies to everything.
I agree.
What's your thoughts on focus?
My thoughts on focus. I need to be better at it.
Better at it.
Yes, I need to be better at
So give me
shifting my focus. My focus.
so give me an example of when shifting your focus a made a big difference.
Um, the one that comes straight to mind was when Kaylin was sick, and it
Mm-hmm.
was about 2 months into his treatment,
Right.
and that's when I decided that I needed to shift our focus from like just surviving to thriving.
Yeah.
Because it's
That's a
like,
shift
okay, so I
that
can't,
most people don't make.
yeah, like I can't control the medication he's getting, but I can control what he puts into his body.
Right.
So
Because
that's
they were
a
just
shift.
yeah, and they were just saying, oh, as long as he's eating, just give him whatever he wants to eat.
Yeah, you can have a cookie. Sugar is fine. Okay.
Even though we know that sugar will poison you just as much as most street drugs, but we're not
Well,
talking about sugar today.
no, but I'm just saying the focus was focus was just I I felt kind of defeated. I think around 2 months in, it
Oh,
was
okay.
just like I don't want to do these drugs. I don't want. Well, I wasn't doing them. I would have done them instead of him. But
Right.
um, uh, I can't control what drugs he gets,
Right.
and so when I shifted my focus from "oh poor me, I can't do anything about it" to you know what I can. I can choose to not give him certain foods. I can choose to have him eat certain foods,
Right.
and that will help him thrive. That was the shift
So
of my focus is that I needed to take control of what I could control.
that's a huge shift,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the ones that most people miss, I think.
Well, I think they miss it because it's simple. It's
Yeah.
it's all in your head.
Well, the most powerful catalysts in life are simple.
Yeah.
Just because, of course, just because something's simple doesn't make it easy, right?
Right.
Because I'll be coaching someone, and they'll say like, well, you may just make it sound so simple. Oh, well, it is simple. It's not easy, but it is simple.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the distinctions that we got to realize is that just because something's not just because something's simple
Doesn't make it
doesn't make it
easy.
easy.
Right.
But simplicity is, now I'm going off on Tony Robbins today, but he uses this phrase. He says, complexity is the enemy of execution.
Mm-hmm.
Because the more complicated you make it, the harder it's going to be to do anything about it. And the more confusing it is, it's going to be to do anything about it.
Yeah.
I think there's certain industries that will intentionally shift your focus, that will intentionally make things extremely difficult to understand,
Mm-hmm.
so that you will change your focus, and you won't keep digging into whatever they're trying to do. I won't name any industries, but
Oh, I was gonna start naming some.
there's several industries that do that.
Yeah.
You know
Or
that.
they want to shift your focus to fear. They just want you to be
Mm-hmm.
afraid because if you're afraid, you can be controlled.
Much easier to control people when
Yeah.
they're afraid. Yeah,
Especially if it's for
absolutely.
your life.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
But if
You
it's
can.
your livelihood, it's even like even more.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Who cares if I die? I have to be able to
Like
live.
all through COVID,
Yeah.
I told people that when COVID was happening that the market was booming during COVID.
Mhm.
And so I I coined this little phrase where I don't know if I coined it, but I like to think I coined it. But basically, I would just start telling people, if you threaten people's lives, they're fine. They're just going to keep going on. But if you threaten the way they live, if you threaten their ability, that's how I said it. If you threaten people's lives, then they're fine. They'll keep going. But if you threaten their ability to live, that's when they freak out.
Yep.
And it sounds so funny, but it's so true. Like
Well,
if
if you think you're gonna die, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna live to the fullest. You're gonna do all the things you want to do.
But most
But
people during
also,
COVID didn't. They just
that's
locked
true.
themselves in.
It is true. They were very
Because of why? Because of what?
fear.
Because of their focus. They were
Well,
focused on that
yeah.
fear. They
Hmm.
were focused on fear.
Focused on getting the respiratory
But I
thing.
don't think it was they were focusing, and I don't think it wasn't because they were focusing on COVID.
Hmm.
They were focusing on what would happen to them if they walked out of their house.
Right. It
They
made
were
you afraid to breathe.
they were more afraid of the powers that be than actually getting sick. I know that for a fact because I've talked to dozens of people about it,
Hmm.
probably hundreds at this point.
Yeah. We allowed to talk about that.
Huh?
We allowed to talk about
I guess we'll
COVID.
see if they take us off YouTube. I doubt it. The COVID's been over for a long time.
Uh, yeah.
But that's the bottom line is there what you're are you focusing on that thing that you can control? Are you focusing on fear?
Yeah.
And you brought up a really interesting point earlier that I was thinking about. You you can control your own. You ultimately you have the choice to control your own focus,
Hmm.
right? You have that choice,
Yeah.
but people can abuse. Um, they'll abuse the masses' ability to focus, especially the people. That's why some of the really strong-minded people that can control their focus, during a crisis, they're one of the first people that get
In trouble?
taken care of. You saw we saw that in like the Holocaust.
Right.
Hitler would take care of the people that thought for themselves because he wanted the people that were able to just focus on whatever was
What do they
happening to them.
call them in Star Wars? Rebels.
Rebel. Yeah, right.
They're the rebels.
But you can use that focus on fear to control the masses, to
Hmm.
control whatever you want,
Right.
because that's how most people think. And but that's not how you should be. You should be able to control your own focus. It's
Yeah.
not. It's it's the only way that you can unlock who you really are. It's the only way you can really get to your full potential, whatever that is for you. It's different for everyone.
Hmm.
But the only way to actually get to that potential is you got to be able to control your own focus.
Yeah. Why do you think people choose not to control their own focus? Why do you think? Is it because of the loop, the crazy eight loop, or
I think a lot of them don't even know they can control their own focus. I think a lot of them
yeah,
in it, a
that
lot of it
makes
is
sense.
ignorance. Not, and
They're
that's
not
not.
taught that they can do that
They're
because
not taught that they can control their own
it's like
focus.
when we were growing up, our parents would say, "Oh, you can do anything you put your mind to."
Right.
So we got into this, but where was I going with that?
I don't know.
I'm like, huh. But if you put your mind to it, you can change your focus. But a lot of millennials don't think like that. They think it's more like you can do anything you can put your mind to, and it's like a career type thing.
Yeah.
And if you don't get that career that you wanted and you put your mind to it, then your focus goes. downhill again.
Because you didn't get it?
Yeah.
Because
There's
you feel like you failed or what?
right.
You just change your focus to something else. Change your focus to, okay, what can I learn from the situation?
Yeah, but I mean, when when you're told you can do anything you put your mind to, you don't think you can change your mind sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
can you
that's
change your mind?
true.
I mean, I didn't get what I really wanted. So I have no plan B, right?
Hmm.
There's no plan B because you were focused on that one goal, but it didn't work out. Like, you see that a lot with athletes that
Okay.
get hurt, like
Yeah, that's
football
true.
players that are in the NFL and they get hurt the first season, and it's like they're done,
Yeah, and then
and a lot of
their
them give
mind,
up.
yeah, they
Yeah,
get really devastated, which makes sense.
yeah,
But that's true. And you've actually got, there's actually quite a few different athletes that that's happened to,
mm-hmm.
and in fact, I've got a coach that was apparently pretty close to being in the Major League Baseball,
Mm-hmm.
and he, I don't know what he got, had a serious injury,
Yeah,
and he wasn't able to play baseball anymore, and he was devastated. Like he was like that was
yeah.
all he ever wanted,
It's all that's
and he can't have it
they
anymore.
their
And that,
identity was that.
yeah, and now he's a phenomenal coach.
Yeah,
But he was able to do that because he shifted focus,
right.
because he was able to say, okay, what else can I do? What can I learn from this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And you know what he got from that situation?
Experience.
Experience and a badass story.
That's true.
You
That's
know?
true. All of your failures can be really great stories.
And see, that's the thing. That's how I like to focus on life. I like to
Mm-hmm.
focus on life as a story.
Well, it is
You know,
God's
our
story. He's writing it.
exactly. But most people don't think of it that way. They don't think of it as a story is being written right now. You know, that's why I think it's so funny when people say we're making history. You're always making history. Like everyone's making history right now. Like
Right.
everything that's happening
It's just
is
not all going to be
is
written down.
right. But you can. That's what I'm saying. That's one of the reasons. One of these days we'll have to talk about journaling, because that's that's a way you can capture those stories. That's the way that you can capture things that you would never know otherwise.
Or remember.
You know, when you read some of those like old letters from the old soldiers and stuff, it's really fascinating because like we wouldn't have known half of that stuff without that.
Yeah. Like when we found your grandpa's journal from when he was in the military.
Right.
That was pretty cool.
But they chose that. They chose to focus on writing that down. They chose to focus on, and it's fascinating because you can learn so much about about people from what they focus on too.
Mm.
You know, what they're how they're developing in their personality, whatever that looks like. You can tell a lot from
So
a
is
person
our
based on their
3-year-old going to
focus.
be Batman when he's older? I'm just
Right?
his focus.
But we can but I do want to say that you can you can upgrade your focus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so many people they think that your focus, first of all, that your focus is always only in the present. Like you can only focus on the people that understand that you can control your focus. It's like the only thing you can focus on the present. Well, you can focus on the future, but you want them to work together,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you can start to upgrade your focus. You know, we get stuck in this mentality of everything's got to be in these giant leaps, right? But some of the biggest focus shifts are just
Like the tractor
3-degree
story.
shifts, right? I think we
Yeah.
actually talked about that last week or 2 weeks ago about the airplane that takes off
Yeah.
from Hawaii, or from California going toward Hawaii, right? If you're 1 degree off,
Yeah. You won't
then
make it there.
right.
Yeah.
But you can do that. You can make those tiny little shifts in focus. It works for routines, it works for your career, it works for everything. Make those little focus shifts. We think that they're not going to make a big difference. We think that, well, I changed it for a while, but
It's not working right
continue,
now.
just it's one step at a time.
That's how a lot of people feel with health. It's like you start something new and
Hmm.
you do it for about a month
Yeah.
and you still don't feel different. Well, sorry, it takes 2 months for you to start feeling different because
Yeah.
it compounds. It takes consistency.
Nobody probably wants to hear about how I lost weight.
Well, no.
I was working out for 4 solid months before I lost a pound.
Yeah.
And then bam, 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 it
It
started
went
dropping
really
off.
quick. Yeah. Because it compounded.
But I had to focus on that and and turn that. I had to turn working out into my identity. That's what had to happen.
Well, and I think that you have to shift what your goal should be. Like,
Well, my goal
I
was never
ate healthy today. That should be your focus instead of
right,
I'm eating healthy and I'm not losing weight.
right.
Like, well, I ate healthy today, and
Well,
that's gonna help me later.
I think I've already touched on this before, but I think one of the things for me was that I was focusing on my my outcome was that I wanted performance.
Hmm.
So you have to have a strong enough. You have to have a strong enough why.
Yeah.
On top of that,
Well, even then, like, didn't you get discouraged?
hmm
Yeah. But you had to shift your focus again.
right?
You have to keep shifting it, and I think that's really hard to, because you can get out of your crazy eight loop for an hour or two,
Right.
and then something else triggers it. Like, it's probably not even the same thing that triggered it before, but something else will trigger it, and you'll go
Hmm.
right back in. So then
That's
you have to shift again. So that will also take time
that's why.
to condition.
I was gonna say, and that's why you got to condition. And we
Mm.
won't go crazy into conditioning. I love talking about conditioning,
Well, that's also a focus thing.
but
So
yeah, it is. That's true.
we picked a broad subject.
Yeah, focus is broad, but it really does come. It encompasses everything.
Mm.
Um, it's funny because people will freak out when you say like you only experience the reality that you are observing yourself. Like
Yeah.
I don't really
It's
like
like
I
the my
personally
truth
I
thing.
personally don't really like the term my truth, but it kind of makes sense because it's like what I'm observing or what I'm focusing on is creating the life I'm experiencing right now.
Hmm.
Now it's not the objective truth, but it's the way I see it
Yeah.
because that's what I'm focusing on.
Is you basically,
Well,
like,
just
we all
whatever the
do.
situation is.
Yeah.
I have a vastly different uh, perspective on life than I did a year ago because of what I chose to focus on consistently.
Right.
If I chose to consistently focus on all the things that have gone wrong, we, I'd be a complete mess right now.
Sure. I think that's everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Definitely me.
You're not a mess.
Sometimes I am.
Well,
That's my truth.
that you're a mess,
Yes. But I get to
but
turn
you're
it into my message.
in
So,
progress, right? We're all in progress.
yeah. Yep.
That's the ultimate.
I haven't
That's
given
the
up, so
that's the key to happiness
that
is progress.
you're right.
People think that it's wealth and all and health and all this stuff. It's not. It's progress. Are you moving forward?
What do you focus on?
Well, thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for we kind of this one was a little bit rambly, but focus is a broad subject and it controls your entire life. Whatever you focus on is the life you're going to live. That's the experience you're going to have. And I would challenge everyone this week to be intentional about what you focus on. Just just think about what, the first step is understanding that it's happening and understanding that you have the power to shift your own focus. And then from that point, be intentional about it. You don't have to be at the mercy of your of circumstances
Situation,
and
yeah.
situations. You don't have to. So control your focus. Be intentional about what you focus on. And until then, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.